In the last video, we moved completely off of content layer and into Keystatic. The only thing left is for us to add some custom components into the MDX field, as well as actually render out the MDX that we receive from Keystatic. Huge thanks also to Christoph over on the Keystatic Discord for answering my question and just letting me know how I can do this. In the previous version of Keystatic, where they had only the document field, they used to store the data inside an mdoc file instead of an mdx file, and Keystatic actually provided a first-party function that converted the mdoc output into HTML. So I was wondering if Keystatic also has something like this for mdx, but as I figured out on the Discord, mdx is quite popular and many people have already created mdx to HTML conversion packages. So they decided not to make their own one, and instead we can hook into next-mdx-remote or any other one that you feel comfortable with. Let's start with the Keystatic config. If you're not familiar with Keystatic and how to set it up, you can check out the full playlist here. But I'll just give you a quick rundown. So we've created a collection which is called client work, and we call the collection function. And then we can pass in some configuration into it. So we've passed in the label, the path where we want to store this, and then some configuration regarding the way that this looks. So if you look at the Keystatic dashboard and go into client work and then inside one of these, then you can see that our content field is front and center here and our metadata is in the sidebar. That's what we've described here. And then finally we have the schema. So within the schema we have a content field here, and this field is going to be the MDX field. So within this we can start defining some custom components. First I want an H2, and this is going to be this heading that we have, where we take the text that we want in the heading, and the first letter, the first word, we turn it into a yellow text. So the is here yellow, yellow, and then all these are yellow. So to define custom components, Keystatic gives us some predefined functions, just like the fields. My auto import was a little broken here, so I had to manually just import from Keystatic core/content components. So as you can probably tell, the block is going to be a block level element inside our Keystatic UI. They also have, I believe, inline elements, repeating elements, and wrapper elements that you can use. But for now, we're just going to stick with the block. Here we just call the function, and like any other Keystatic field, we have to pass in an object, and then here we have access to label and things like that. So the label, I'm going to make it custom heading. Let's pass in a description and say custom heading 2. The first word is styled yellow. And of course we have our schema. In the schema, we're going to define, like any other schema, we're going to say that we have the actual text as the fields are text and labels going to be text, validation is going to be true. And we have the content view. So this is where we're actually going to render the JSX. So I'm just going to go to my existing site's GitHub page. We're going to have to change a few things. Here in the last site I was working with just the children, but here we don't have to work with the children or do any of these checks, because we know that our props are going to have a props.value.text. So essentially what we're doing here is creating an array of all the words, individual words in the heading. Then we're taking out the first one and storing it in this first, and then shifting the array. So we're removing the first item and joining the rest of the words with a space so that we get a string again. And then we're just returning the first span with the first word and a second span with the rest of the words. Then we should be able to press slash and we have our custom heading here. So as you can see, we have the title and then the description, the label and description, but we don't have this icon. That's what the icon here is for. So after the description, I can just add an icon, and the icon expects a JSX element. So under the hood, actually, Keystatic uses lucid.dev, which is a massive library of icons that you can install directly into any framework. So let's just check out the H2, and let's copy the SVG and just paste that in here. We'll have to make a small amount of adjustments to these. So it's going to be width, and so it's going to be line, and then class name. Now if we check out our custom heading, then there we go. We have the icon and the description. So how this works is that we can enter this add this into our document, and then if we click on edit, then we have this modal where we can actually put in our information here, and there it will show up. The yellow coloring currently doesn't show because Keystatic doesn't currently allow Tailwind CSS, but it is something that they've talked about and something that they are working on supporting, so that you can render an accurate preview inside this. But for now, that's absolutely fine. We can just continue, make our custom heading, and edit this and add in the deliverables. And that's that. The second custom component that I want is an image preview component. So as you can see here, the images that I've added, they are not just regular images, but if I click on them, then they open a full screen preview right here. This is good when you're showcasing designs and things like that for anyone who's looking to get a closer look. So let's call this image preview. And this will also be a block. Label of image with preview. Description. Image with a full screen preview. One click. Icon. Let's go back to Lucid and find an image. Let's copy the SVG and paste that in here. And finally, schema. This is going to be image, fields.image. And here's where I hit a whole bunch of issues. It took me way longer than I care to admit. It's been about 2 or 3 days now. But this is my goal with this channel, is that not everything is perfect. Sometimes you hit some bottlenecks that you just can't cross, and you have to hang out in some discords and wait for people who are much smarter than you to give you the solution. So that's exactly what I've done. So let's get back into it. So in this image field, we can add in our label for image, add in a validation, and then we have our directory and public path. So we're just going to make it public, client work, images, and add in a trailing slash. And the public path is going to be the same thing, but omitting the public directory. This is honestly just going to be trial and error. I had to mess with the paths a little bit to get this right. This is going to create slash client work slash images, and then slash a directory with the name of the slug, followed by the images inside that directory. We'll demo this in a second, but I just want to go ahead. After the image, I want to add in an alt, which is a simple text field. With that looks fine. And along with an image inside Next.js, if you provide a width and a height, then it makes it easier for Next to display that image initially while the image loads, so that we prevent what is called layout shift. So layout shift is when the page is loading, the image will load, but since it doesn't have any height set, it will just be 0 height, and then suddenly it will take up space. So when it takes up space, everything below that will jump, and that's a metric that Google looks for and actively downranks your site if your cumulative layout shift is too much. So to combat that, we're going to have a width and a height. So the width is going to be a fields.number with a label of width and validation of true, and same with the height. This is fairly repetitive, so hopefully Codium can catch it for me. Height and yeah, okay. So that's our props done. Now we can move to the content view, and this was another massive hurdle that I hit. Let's look at the props that we receive here. So props have a value, and within the value we get access to everything that's defined in our schema. And here we have our image. But unlike the Keystatic Reader API, which formats this image into the proper source URL that we want, which is this public path, rather than that, what they actually do is they give us an object with a data of like the actual encoded image, as well as the extension and the file name, which is not really helpful because we can't directly sort of display that image in the preview on the site. So this is when I went and I started a thread on the Discord that, I'm giving you the public path, but I'm getting back this array. So how can I work with that? And obviously Christoph was back at it again. He's actually gone and made this complete image preview component with a nice way use image data, which converts the data into a blob and then finally returns the actual image file that then we can render. So not gonna lie, I just copied this over into this Keystatic image preview, I only had to change one thing, which was that his type definition here, this was null. And that causes an error because image data is of type uint array or undefined rather than or null. So that's the only thing I changed, which I gave him that feedback. But other than that, man, this is absolutely perfect for what we need. The only small glitch here, he says, is that it doesn't show the image until you save the page. So for me, honestly, right now, this is fine. But Simon brought in Emma and they are probably going to start work on some sort of way to display the image in the preview. But for now, I'm just going to use this Keystatic image preview. You can find this code on GitHub if you're actually stuck on this. But what we're going to do is we're going to just return and put in our Keystatic image preview. And this just takes in, oh no, what does it take in? Image data, which is going to be props.value.image right here. And now if we go to our Keystatic and we can see we have our preview. And if we edit this, we can add in an image. Now, I literally just got access to Arc on Windows. If you're curious about that, let me know. Maybe I'll make a video on that. But if I add my Arc card here, and let's just add a test to it of 500 and 500. And if you click done, then technically we've entered the image. It's just that until we save this, we're not going to get an actual preview, which is unfortunate, but honestly, I can deal with it for now. I can keep saving the image if I need. I can always unpublish the changes while I'm still making small iterations and then publish it once I'm completely done. So that's going to be fine. So we now have two custom components that are defined inside our Keystatic config. One is the h2 and the other is this image with a preview. So we now have access to setting these inside the Keystatic Admin UI, but we're not actually using these custom components on the Next.js page. So let's get into that next. So like I said, for the MDX rendering, we're going to use next-mdx-remote. So in a terminal, I'm just going to pnpm I next-mdx-remote. So in our work/slug page, we can import mdx-remote from mdx-remote/rsc since we're using React Server components. And then down here, instead of this, we can render our mdx-remote. And this will take a source, which is our content, and the components, which is going to be an object. So for the components, I took the h2, copied it from the content view from here. And the only thing I changed is that instead of props.value on the page side, we actually get our text directly inside our props. Then we have our image preview. And here, unfortunately, the props don't get typed since they're coming from Keystatic. So I just manually typed them by going to the content view here and hovering over these props. And then within the value, we can take our image, alt and width and height. But like I said, only here we get that weird formatting of this data. On the page side, we actually just get an image as string and everything else on string and width as number, which is a little odd since we've specifically mentioned that the validation should be is required true. But hey, whatever. So here I'm just destructuring the props and then passing it into our image with preview component. This does not come from the Keystatic image preview because this needs to work with the uint array encoded image. Instead, this goes to the component which I have created for the blog initially. And finally, I'm wrapping this entire thing in a suspense because according to the docs, you should. Not really sure why, but I just did that. So we have a suspense, then we have the MDX remote. The source takes in the string of markdown, and then the components take in any custom components that you may have referenced inside the MDX. And now I'm just going to refresh, and if we go to the article that we were editing here, then here we have our image and also the yellow text here showing up correctly. And that's a wrap. In this series, we went from a website that was using MDX with content layer to a completely visual editing setup with Keystatic and its MDX fields. If you're interested in checking out any of the previous videos, you can find the playlist linked here. And other than that, keep learning and building, and I'll see you next time.